Hello guys, welcome to this 12th episode of the Build a Web API in ASP.NET Core 3.1 and consume it with an MVC client also written in ASP.NET Core 3.1. I shall be uploading one video every day from Monday to Friday. For viewing the completed application in action with the functionalities, please watch the introduction video which is in part 1 and you will find the link in the description of this video. In my previous episode, I discussed the integration of error logging in the Web API project using Serilog NuGet package. So Serilog is a newer logging framework for .NET, and in this episode I shall walk you through the process of creating the customer repository with the initialization of the customer repository class which implements the iCustomer repository which we have built before, and writing the method to get all the customers. So in this series of tutorials, all the episodes are in continuation, are built on from the cumulative total of the previous ones. So is the building of the code base. So I would highly recommend you to be up to date with all the previous episodes before viewing this one. The essential links and the SQL scripts, if there is any, you will find in the video description. I also request you to view the entire video in all these episodes to get the best out of them. And as always, every suggestion and feedback are very welcome. And please subscribe and share this channel and click the bell notification icon to get the latest in the uploads. So by the end of this lecture, we shall learn how to initialize the customer repository class with the connection string from the configuration file, which is appsettings.json, and complete the get all customers method with ADO.NET technology. Okay, so let's flip over to Visual Studio now. Now inside this models folder, I will create another class, add class and name this customer repository. So customer repository class, right? So public class customer repository is created for me. And here, this class will implement the iCustomer repository interface. All right. So this was the iCustomer repository. So I will just open it side by side. So it has got a few methods, which is just the signatures, get all customers, get customer by ID by passing the ID, then add customer, update customer, and delete customer. The usual CRUD operations, create, retrieve, update, and delete. Okay, so I will have to implement. So this is because we have not so far implemented, so it doesn't implement interface member this and this. So don't worry about this squiggly line, it will all go in a few minutes time. But if you are unhappy about these squiggly lines in the first place, what you can do is you can click on this potential fixes and implement the interfaces, either all members explicitly or implicitly. So you can go for any of these. I'll go for implement interface implicitly. Okay, so all of these methods, the shells are created with the throw new not implemented exception, but this, because this is returning the type of object that is required in this iCustomer setting, iCustomer repository interface. So if you just keep it in a new vertical tab group, you can see what I mean. So this is expecting a return of a get all customers is returning IEnumerable of customer, and guest customer by ID is returning a customer. So this is acceptable as an implementation or a shell of implementation on which we will build. So what I will do, I will start writing. First of all, what I have to do is I have to initialize a few fields and then initialize the customer repository public constructor. Okay, so if you want, you can just follow me. I will keep it intact, and then public property, and this will be of an I configuration type. I configuration, and I'll call it configuration. Get set, and then a public string to represent the connection string. And then a private read-only iLogger property in which the customer repository will be filled, passed. So private read-only iLogger of iLogger type of this customer repository class that we are going to build, and call this, name this variable underscore logger. All right, and then create the public constructor. So, and pass these two objects. Just copy from here. And now let this be known with small c. Start with small c for configuration, and then this iLogger object. Of customer repository type. So copy this and paste this, and I will name this as logger. Okay, and then this dot configuration, or simply configuration, this is this class configuration equals this passed on configuration object with small c. So this is inversion of control or dependency injection, if you know. So, and then this connection string object, this connection string which I have declared up here with a public string, this will use this configuration object, configuration with a pair of rectangular braces, and then this will get its value. Let me just complete it, terminate it with semicolon so that it stops giving the squiggly lines. And then connection strings, I'll tell you in a bit where is it come from. So it comes from the app settings.json. So connection strings, and this was named as default connection. So connection strings colon default connection. If you quickly have a look over here, connection strings and default connections. Right. So I've been able to initialize the customer repository public constructor. Now, in this lecture, I will also finish one of the methods and take it from the next lecture for the next method. So first of all, let us build this application to see everything is all right or anything is broken or not. So Control Shift B again. So build succeeded. So I'm fine. I can add this here. So I'll remove this part and get all customers. So I'll start with a list, generic list of customer, which is customers. Take the suggested customers field, so new list of customer and a pair of empty circular brackets. Okay, now comes the fun. I'll be using the using statement, and I'll be using the area.net. So please follow me carefully. So using now SQL connection con. Here it is giving me an objection, so I can fix it by going to the light bulb and generate class. So all of these suggestions are not valid, so I'll have to install this package system.data.sql client. Okay, so find and install the latest version, or install with package manager. So browse, click on accept. I am just installing system.data.sql client. This is installed successfully. You can see here in the installed. So this is all installed. Right, so I don't worry about this squiggly lines, this output errors, build errors. So I'll be completing it first and then worry about these squiggly lines. So using SQL connection con, I've already got this. So I will use this using statement using system.data.sql clients. So this has installed the using statement using system.data.sql client, and then I am ready to write this using SQL connection con equals new SQL connection, and I will pass this connection string. Which I have declared up. Okay, so connection string, right, and then below this using statement is a pair of curly braces in which all the code will be there. So first of all, let's do a try block, try catch. It's just exception handling. I'll just close this. All right, so SQL command. Then there is another new object, SQL command over here. And SQL command is, I'll just name this CMD is equal to new. I'll tell you in a bit what is this SQL command. And here this SQL command is initializes a new instance of the SQL command class. It is a command you can pass in text, or you can just pass in your stored procedures. So you've got this 4 overloads. So I'll be using, this is the command text in case you are just writing a query straight away, which is not the case here. So I will be using the command text and then the connections. Okay, so command text in my case, it will be the stored procedure, which is so within double quotes, this is dbo.spselect customer, and I will pass this connection string and then semicolon to terminate the code, and then this try block is actually requiring a catch block. Okay, so try in this block of statement and then catch. Right, this is exception handling. So I can paste some useful links for you to try out this try catch, this exception handling. So now command type. Now in this case, it will be system.data.command type, or dot. We have got this as a stored procedure, not a text. Stored procedure. So because I am going to call the stored procedure, which I have already written in the SQL command. So command.command type is a stored procedure, command type dot stored procedure, and then in the next line I'll have to open the connection dot open. So this is all ADO.NET. I'm calling the Microsoft SQL Server and calling the database and selecting the SP select customer. This is the stored procedure for this purpose. And then there is a SQL data reader object because I have to read the data. This is a retrieve operation. SQL data, not data adapter, but data reader. Call this RDR. Now this SQL data reader class is read only and forward only, meaning you cannot write to it, and once you have read a record and go to the next record, there is no way for you to go to the previous one. So that gives it the advantage. Now here, now this I have come to the stage of initializing an instance of the SQL data reader class. So SQL data reader cannot be created using the new operator. Like you cannot create just like that SQL data reader RDR equals new SQL data reader. And instead SQL command objects, so this is the SQL command object CMDs, execute reader method creates and returns an instance of SQL data reader. So I'll have to write CMD dot execute reader to create an instance of the SQL data reader class. Okay, and this is connection oriented. SQL data reader is connection oriented, meaning it requires an active connection to the database while reading the data. That's why this connection was required over here and connection needed to be open. However, this connection doesn't need to be closed. So it, and instead this connection gets automatically closed at the end of the using block, using code block. And one thing we have to remember that this reader needs to be closed when done reading. So armed with these things, let's move forward. And within this try block itself, there will be a while, there will be a loop, because you have initialized that reader object, but while reader.read, that is the while block. While it is still reading something. Now this read method, it advances the SQL data reader to the next record. Okay, so if there is a next record, do this within the loop while reader.read, initialize a customer object, new customer, and then once this customer object is initialized, I can call all its fields, properties, customer dot, you can see customer dot ID to start with. Now here is a trick, how will the customer ID be got from the reader? So here, first of all, because ID we know is a integer, int, that is a primary key. So first of all, this reader reads like this. So reader with a pair of empty braces, rectangular braces, and if you name this column within double quotes, it can read it if only this is converted into its specified type. Now this is supposed to be a string, system.string, you can see. So I'll have to convert it into the integer. Convert dot to int 32. Okay, 32-bit integer. And then other things are easier because they are all varchar or string. So customer.name, customer.name equals RDR What do you think? What should I write over here? You're right if you think within a pair of rectangular braces. If I write name and just to take absolutely no chances to make it to string, to explicitly cast it to string. All right. Now, one thing I have not mentioned so far, that what are these within quotes, quoted strings ID and name, which serve here as the index to the reader object. Now, if you look into the Microsoft SQL Server and the customer table, these are actually the fields or the columns of the customer table. So they need to have the same spelling. So there is no typo allowed over here, and they will actually get the name and the ID values from this reader object. Okay, so there you are. And then for the other few properties, let me dump the code from my clipboard, which will make it much shorter. All right, now that you know the process, so there's no harm in pasting it from my memory and then have it completed. And at the end, this customers object, I'll add to this list, I'll add this customer. So customers, because that's a list, dot add, and this newly generated customer. Okay, this will make it happy. And still not, because I have not returned an IEnumerable. Now, outside this while loop, this reader is done reading. Obviously, while the loop is still running, it was reader was required. Now it is no more required. So I will call the close method of this reader. So reader.close to close the reader. And as I have already said, that connection doesn't need to be closed. It will automatically get closed once you get to the outside the using statement. So I will not close the connection, and it will automatically be closed. So catch block, into the catch block, and then this exception object is passed, exception X, and then I will use the logger that we have passed as a dependency injection logger object, logger dot log error. And what I will log, there are quite a few, there are 4 overloads, so I will be using one of the overload exception and then the exception message for this exception. So error just to know that in case there is an error, this has been originated in this method, and then colon, and then an emoji, bracket, okay, and then semicolon. And once the catch block is throwing an exception, excuse me, no customers is returned, so customers equals null. And finally, outside the using statement, the connection is already closed and I am still inside the method, and I will return the customers, return customers, which is a list type. And why this satisfies this requirement of returning an IEnumerable customer? Because list of customer is list is also deriving from IEnumerable. It is implementing IEnumerable interface. IEnumerable T interface is implemented by list of T. Okay, so in this lecture we have saw thoroughly how we can use the area.net object and SQL data reader and SQL command object to get all the customers by using our SP select customer stored procedure on the SQL Server database.